Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wajiha Naqvi and I'm a creative professional, a singer-songwriter and a music history researcher based in Karachi, Pakistan. Today's talk for the WOW Festival is on the forgotten histories of the music queens of the subcontinent. Long before the current pop culture reference of the term queen lived the queens of yesteryears. These were established women that were literally honored with the title of queen, Malika, for the specific skill they had perfected as a performing artist. While personalities such as Begum Akhtar from India, known as Malika-e-Ghazal, and Noor Jahan from Pakistan, known as Malika-e-Tarannum, are more widely known, there's been little effort on documenting the lives of female performers, particularly those that belong to a tradition of performance communities trained in music and dance. In particular, I would like to trace the evolution of the controversial history of the courtesan tradition of the subcontinent. Who were these women? How did they become stigmatized in history? And who are some of the Pakistani female artists that came from this unique tradition? Female performers have existed throughout the history of the subcontinent, tracing back to the dancing girl of Mohenjo-daro, thousands of years before the creation of Pakistan itself. These include the courtesans of Mughal India, which broadly refers to all those singers, dancers, musicians that were associated with the court. It was particularly the term tawaif that rose to prominence during the 18th and 19th century of Mughal rule and became synonymous with all courtesans. However, it is important to note that the term courtesan and tawaif do not always mean the same, because it does not provide an accurate description of the different categories of female performers that existed in those times. For instance, alongside the category of tawaifs included bais and gunikars, but then there were also the domnis, which was a distinct category of female singers. So who were the courtesans? The courtesans were female entertainers, proficient in singing, dancing, poetry, and social etiquette under the patronage of the royal courts that ruled over the subcontinent. While some were employed at the courts, many others were like modern-day businesswomen who ran their own salons known as kothas or havelis, where many younger princes from royal families were sent for training in the art of conversation and literary discourse, as well as the appreciation of music, arts, and culture. They would also be invited to sing and dance on weddings and other popular occasions. They belonged to musician households from both Muslim and Hindu faiths and were accepted by both. They not only sang but contributed to compositions through their own repertoire of language, poetry, and lived experiences, thus giving a new life to semi-classical genres such as the thumri, kajri, dadra, hori, ghazal, etc., some of the distinct art forms they are known for. It is noted that poets longed for courtesans to sing their poetry because that was one way of memorializing their work. It was during colonial rule that the British realized the social influence that these courtesans had over the royal elite, and as part of their conquest over the subcontinent, they began a targeted campaign against all female performers. It was during the end of the 19th century that the anti-naach movement, derived from the Urdu word naach, which means dance, took root and officially classified all courtesans as prostitutes, a legacy that carries remnants till today. This coincided with a rise in Christian missionaries that sought to spread Victorian values of morality, while the local Indians, including their manners, customs, and traditions, were considered less civilized and in need of refinement. Meanwhile, these courtesans also played an active role in the freedom movement of 1857 against the British. Given that they were already economically independent, they contributed to the movement in terms of financing as well as providing refuge to other freedom fighters in their kothas. The courtesans of Lucknow were an integral part of the court of Wajid Ali Shah, the last Nawab of Awadh, before India was forcibly annexed by the British. In particular, his wife Begum Hazrat Mahal, who was also a courtesan, is known to have played a prominent role against the rebellion. This resulted in them being further excluded by the British from wealth, property, and respect in society. With the onset of partition, both newly created nation-states of India and Pakistan continued to politicize these traditions in order to serve their own national objectives of a distinct identity and culture that was separate from one another. In India, many of the women came from Muslim families, and attempts were made to sanitize the Hindu culture for Muslims. renaming the Bais to Devis. Many were disallowed from singing for the All India radio unless they provided marriage certificates, perhaps a reason why so many still remain unrecorded. Similarly, in Pakistan, the decline of the once known cultural district, Hira Mandi of Lahore, into an infamous red light area is one such example. With increasing negative perceptions and specific views on public morality, female performing communities became the most marginalized and stigmatized. Given the radically changing environment and patronage system, many of the courtesan performers began to re-establish their profession in the film industry across Lahore, Bombay, and Calcutta, as many of them were already skilled in singing, acting, and dancing and were well suited for those roles. Even then, the portrayal of the courtesan tradition in mainstream cinema and popular culture continued to reinforce certain stereotypes as the unmarried, immodest dancing girl. While there have been individual attempts to reclaim and archive the legacy of many of these female performers, these efforts continue to be far and few in between, particularly on this side of the border. Voices like the legendary Begum Akhtar from Lucknow are perhaps remembered in Pakistan, but little is known about her life as a courtesan prior to her marriage as Akhtari Bai Faizabadi. Unfortunately, many other voices like her have either been lost or forgotten, both under colonial and nationalist ideas of cultural production. In this regard, I would now like to share the story of two critically acclaimed female singers that came from the courtesan tradition of female performers. While such archiving requires ongoing research and effort, my intention is to encourage greater investigation into both the lives and contributions of many other such women who are some of the earliest custodians of the musical legacy of Pakistan. One of the most prominent names in this regard is Mukhtar Begum. She was born in Amritsar in 1901 and trained in Hindustani classical vocal music, first by Mian Meherban Khan and then by Ustad Ashiq Ali Khan of the Patiala Gharana. She also starred in a few films before partition and was known for her exceptional delivery of thumris, dadras, and ghazals. Her training and talent as a vocalist led her to perform in some of the last princely states, much like her successful courtesan contemporaries such as Rasulan Bai, Jaddan Bai, and Gohar Jan. It is also said that when Mukhtar Begum sang at the court of Hyderabad, the Nizam was so moved by her singing that he wanted to crown her. She left India in 1947 along with her husband, Urdu poet and playwright Agha Hashar Kashmiri, to settle in Lahore. Perhaps one of the most lasting contributions of Mukhtar Begum was the role she played in inspiring and training many younger Pakistani female actors and musicians that followed in her footsteps. This list includes renowned female singers like her younger sister Farida Khanum, known for exquisite expression and rendering of the ghazal. She also greatly encouraged the legendary Noor Jahan, along with her sisters, to continue singing by recommending them to various film producers of the industry. In fact, she was the one to give Noor Jahan her stage name from Allah Vasai, and apparently it was Mukhtar Begum's style of performing in a sari that inspired Noor Jahan to adopt the same. She is also known to have trained the playback film singer Naseem Begum, who was considered to be Noor Jahan's singing rival in the 60s, and was also responsible for raising the Pakistani film actor Rani. Another prominent personality literally carrying the title of Queen in her actual name was Malika Pukhraj. Born in 1912 in Hamirpur, she belonged to a family of hereditary musicians and was employed in the courts of Maharaja Hari Singh of Kashmir for 9 years, since the age of 9. She migrated to Lahore after partition and started performing publicly with Radio Pakistan. She was trained by Ustad Ali Bakhsh Kusuri, the father of Bade Ghulam Ali Khan, and had a strong command on the genres of Thumri, Ghazal, Bhajan, Pahari Geet, and Dogri folk songs. In a rare recorded interview, Malika Pukhraj was asked what was her biggest joy, to which she graciously responded, saying that it was to be able to do something of social value and for which one is remembered in history. The fact that at least some of us still remember her famous rendition of Hafiz Jalandhari's Abhi to Main Jawan Hoon, but I'm still young, is a testament to her sincere intentions. Her daughter, Tahira Sayyed, is another well-respected and acclaimed female singer of our country. While there are many other such female histories in need of preservation, the fact that much of the courtesan tradition catered to the male gaze perhaps raises some complex questions for feminists today. There is no doubt that women have operated from conditions of institutionalized patriarchy throughout history, and the world of entertainment in itself is no exception. But to simply reduce these women to mere objects of male desire is to invalidate their own individual power and agency, further pushing them to the margins of history.
अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ, अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ, अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ, हवा भी खुशगवार है, गुलों पे भी निखार है, तरन्नुम में हजार बहार है, कहाँ चला है साथिया, कहाँ चला है साथिया, इधर तो लौट इधर तो आ, इधर तो लौट इधर तो आ, अरे ये देखता है क्या, उठा सब उठा, समा तो देख बेखबर, वो काली काली बदलियां, काली काली बदलियां, उस वक्त पे हो गई आया, वो एक हजूमे में कशा है, सूए में कदारमा, ये क्या गुमा है बदगुमा, समझना मुझको नातमा, ख्याले ज़ुहद अभी कहाँ, अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ, अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ। याद
What is interesting to note is that as performers in the public sphere, these women did not always conform to conventional roles for women, yet were still respected and recognized for their artistic excellence in performance rather than anything else. Moreover, it is this skill and passion for the art itself that continued to inspire the following generations of female performers, paving the way for many music queens still today. Thank you very much for listening.